Howdy, howdy ho. The first thing I want to let you know is I've been around the sun enough times. I've watched games develop and change. I've watched controllers get better.
What's all this dual sense nonsense? It's all these buttons. More like dual arthritis, am I right?
And I've watched gamers get worse. No, seriously, back in the day, console wars used to be like, I play your thing, you play my thing, and we'll see whose is better. Now it's just a bunch of childish, uninformed, petty attacks with zero respect by grown-ass adults. But what I'm here to address today is the notion that many retro and older gamers have that games these days just aren't made like they used to be. That older games were simply better, and that games these days only care about graphics and microtransactions.
You know, back in my day, what was I saying?
The first thing we need to address is the lack of information we had back in the day, which I think is the basis for where nostalgia goggles actually begin. We primarily only had commercials to rely on and word of mouth, and if you were a lucky person who could afford magazine subscriptions, perhaps there was your one or two sources of reviews. You basically had to give it a chance and probably beg your parents to buy it because they sure as hell didn't know a damn thing about what to buy. This created a sort of false confidence, a need to justify one's own purchase because we've long associated blind purchasing with poor decision making, especially if it didn't work out. I think this is where nostalgia truly begins. There was a pride in buying games back in the day because if it did work out, you felt like it was your own judgment skills that put you there. That seems to translate into the same false confidence many retro gamers have in calling out modern games in often uninformed manners. But thanks to today being the age of information, this nostalgia seems to have created a bit of stubbornness in accepting the wide array of information that makes up buying games now. Knowledge is power, and the wealth of information at our fingertips now should make us smarter and better at purchasing. Latching on to narratives about modern gaming being bad by judging it at face value is just stubbornness. No one has to do that anymore. Being uninformed in the modern day is quite literally ignorance.
Back in my day, if you got in the water, you would lose supplies or the wagon would flip. And someone always got dysentery.
Time marches on immutably in one direction, forward. The way things work will always continue to change whether you like it or not. Technology will continue to develop whether you adapt to it or not. It doesn't mean old games are bad, but new games are just built different. There have always been bad games throughout time, but we simply have a far larger volume of games being made now. This does create an opening for the narrative that there are more bad games now, which is true if you completely ignore the fact that there are also more good games now too. Am I here to prattle off a list of games? Of course not. And you know why? Because that's the point. You can always pick a good game from the old days to compare to a bad game from the modern days to make a point. But the point is flawed because you can simply pick a good game from the modern days that was literally impossible to make back in the day. Yeah, it's a pointless fact. Cherry-picking games to push this nostalgia narrative is just being stubborn about how games have changed. Do you have to like everything? Of course not, but just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's bad. For me, playing games now is just the same as it was back in the day. You pick up a controller, you turn on a screen, and you enjoy, or don't enjoy, the ride. To be clear, I'm not saying that everything new is better. I'm just calling for a general respect for modern gaming. Quit with the idea that just because it's old, it's better. Probably, most older people are, hence the future is now, old man, being so memeable. But I'm not here mocking retro games because I enjoyed them myself. I'm here mocking people that disrespect modern gaming at every turn because they focus on things like microtransactions or amazing graphics and don't realize that things are just simply different. Not necessarily better, not necessarily worse, just different.
Back in my day, the titties didn't even bounce. You kids these days got it so good.
Oh, don't worry, we'll be talking microtransactions and free-to-play games in a future video too. I'll see you next time on the Gaming 5.